Welcome back to the Hard Skills Show, where we take a deep dive into the most challenging soft skills required to navigate leadership uncertainty, complexities, and change today and in the future. I'm your host, Dr. Mira Brancu, psychologist, leadership consultant, and founder of TowerScope. Now, today's episode is especially relevant right now, given the stressful national events we're all grappling with and their impact on how organizations are going about supporting or not supporting their employees through this. There's a lot of employees right now looking for different ways to set up their next move in their career, guarding their career future. Some people might call it career proofing, right? A really great topic to help us kick off season 7, focused on navigating unhealthy work environments in honor of my new workbook, Millennials Workbook for Navigating Workplace Politics. And even if you are not navigating an unhealthy work environment right now, just, leading, managing a team, simply trying to support your colleagues, any of that, this conversation is for you. This is for everybody trying to figure out, how do I navigate and take charge of my career? So let me introduce you to our guest, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden. She is a global leadership strategist with 30 years of experience in cultivating professionals into senior leadership roles. Dr. Pruden is an award-winning global speaker and published best-selling author of over 30 books. She has developed 3 frameworks to align talent development with business objectives. And today, she's going to be sharing one of those, the professional equity framework. So welcome and great to have you on the show, Karen. Dr. Karen.
I am so excited to be here and very excited about this conversation.
Yes, me too. So tell us about professional equity. How did you come to this term? How did you come to recognizing it's a need?
Well, most people think when you hear the term equity, a lot of people think about something that increases in value. And the majority of the population would even think about mortgage or home ownership or something like that. And I also happen to be a real estate investor, so I have my toe in that lane as well. And the term is something that I kind of put together. I didn't create the words, but I put together because it really describes what it is that we tap into when there is some type of chaos in business or in a market. And how do you leverage everything that you've built up into that point to utilize to your advantage? And how do you identify your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities and your threats so that you can address those things so that you can be more of a viable candidate? And so for me, what is going on in the US now, there was a change in leadership. I had something happen to me similar to that, but it was in business. There was a change in leadership. A new CEO came into business. And that CEO, this was about 35, 36 years ago, that CEO changed the qualifications of the job that I was currently in. Mm-hmm. And so what did that mean for me and those like me who were in that position? It meant that we needed to reapply for our positions to go forward. So we were basically severed. And then we were asked to reapply for our current position, the position that some of us have been working in. I have been working in it for years. My boss had been working in it for 20 years. And the qualification that he actually changed was that he made a college degree a requirement instead of an option. Previously, it was you can use your work experience and a college degree, but he valued college education, so he made it a requirement. And so as a result, he changed the qualifications of my leadership position, and so we all had to reapply. Professional equity has 3 legs to it. It is your relationships, your area expertise, and your reputation. During that situation, I really had to not only tap into my professional work profile, which is everything that I had done up until that point in my career, but I also had to tap into my reputation. What did people know in terms of the problem that I solved?
Mhm.
um, my relationships, because when you're in leadership, you're not doing the day-to-day work. You are the most vulnerable person the higher up you go in senior leadership, because your success depends on everyone up under you. And so
Mm.
your relationships are up and down the chain and in and out of the doors, because you also have to have relationship with vendors and clients and different things like that. And then your area expertise. What is it that makes you stand out? In marketing, they call it your USP, your unique selling proposition, between someone who has like experience and like education and the same job title. What makes you so different? And so those are the modules of professional equity. And once you solidify those things, people know your reputation, they trust you. You've went through that know, like, and trust factor. You've had some receipts in your past where they know that you generate, some successes in what you're supposed to. You are one who is known for not only communicating what people want to know, but what they also need to know, and that you are respected. And notice I didn't say well liked, but respected throughout various levels of the organization. And people know what it is that you do. People are able to slot you in during chaos in the market. They know exactly where you fit. In some situations, they create jobs for you, based on what they know about you and what they've seen in terms of working with you. And so when I went through that process of reapplying for my job for Home Depot, I checked all the boxes in terms of education and work experience, but I also was able to leverage, because the same people who I've been working with were also those who were interviewing me now based on the new criteria. And so they were able to use the reputation that I had garnered for the 4 years prior to that. They were able to use how I've worked and interacted with multi-level individuals throughout business. And those who knew my area expertise, in addition to whatever I said or did during the employment recruitment process, they were able to utilize that to determine if I was a best fit. And so that is why you want to garner a degree of equity within the market or within business, so that when you need it, you can tap into it. And not when they need it, when you need it, you can tap into it and utilize it.
Brilliant. This is a chock full of information. So
Sorry.
let's break it down to two current pathways that people who are listening might be interested in. One pathway is um, I'm not afraid right now. I haven't lost my job yet, but I don't know how to do this. Like I'm starting from scratch.
Mhm.
The next pathway is, oh my God, I've been separated from my company. I never worked on this before. What do I do now to like move almost backwards to develop my professional equity? So let's take like the sort of current situation. I still have an opportunity. I'm
Mhm.
internal. I'm, not necessarily, thinking I might lose my job, but I'm worried about it, or at least I want to be better at developing my professional equity. Um, let's start with relationships. What do people need to think about when they need to develop the kind of relationships that you're thinking about with professional equity?
The first thing I will tell you is talk to everybody. Talk to and interact with everybody, not just your peers, not just people who are on your level, not just your bosses. Um, Talk to everyone from the janitor all the way up to the C-suite. They all have valuable information that you can utilize either for yourself in terms of your own reputation within the organization, or they have business knowledge that can aid you in the decisions that you make for yourself professionally within that business. Um, a lot of times we are very territorial in terms of our relationship. We know everybody who works in the department with us, and maybe a brother or sister department that works with us and interact with us on a regular basis, but we don't branch out to people in other departments. We don't raise our hand for committees and special projects that can cause us to be on these interbusiness type committees where people outside of your immediate area can see what it is that you do and know what you know. A lot of people don't think about that. When you are within an organization, a lot of times people only look at you as that one job that you have within that organization that they met you. They don't think about what that span of work that you've done prior to that and all the different positions and companies that you work. When you work in intercommittee type group type projects, that is where you're able to share that information. You're able to give them that additional information so that they can put it in their pocket and pull it out as needed. And so that is why it's extremely important to get visibility outside of your immediate work area, volunteer. When you have these assignments, they're not going to always come with extra money. Sorry. You know, a lot of times people want extra money for everything that they do, but no, this is, you are generating equity for yourself and your career within the organization. So there is some value, even though there's not any immediate money that's associated with it. There is value associated with it. And so that's where you want to interact with people in multiple levels. You want to do that visibility on a number of different ways, having conversations, just your little informal conversations. You get in the elevator with somebody, speak to them, you know, a brief conversation. You don't want to hold them up, but introduce yourself, or, you know, if you recognize who they are, you know, tell them, hey, aren't you Bob from marketing? You know, I read your newsletter, or whatever it is. Really get to know people beyond those surface relationships. And that's where you can tap into those type of relationships once you get beyond that surface relationship. And what I mean by that surface relationship is that all you know is that you work together, and maybe he or she may or may not be married or single. You don't know anything else about what they do once they leave and once they check out from work. Then you don't have a good relationship with the people in the workforce. And so you can't tap into that relationship later.
Yeah, I think that's smart for professional equity. It's also smart for workplace politics, navigating workplace politics. And when I say that, and you know, people have kind of like an off-putting, you know, experience with workplace politics. What I'm talking about is just getting work done, because work gets done through people. It doesn't just happen, right? It gets done through people and relationships, and sometimes it's, you know, cross-functional, cross-disciplinary. In addition, I want to sort of pull out a few things that you mentioned here, because we've got a lot of people who listen to this who are introverts, and they're going to be like, I can't talk to anybody, you know? But you mentioned there are structures that are in place that you can make it easy for yourself. Committees, you mentioned.
Yeah.
You mentioned volunteering. You mentioned, you know, flattery. If you're going to be in an elevator, you don't have to have small talk that drives, you know, some introverts crazy. You can say, I saw your seminar, I loved it, and I'd love to hear more about, right? Yeah. So, and the other thing that I want to pull out from what you said is, you know, some people might say, like, I can't talk to the CEO, like I can't talk to some, you know, but that's what the committee work is all about. If you can serve on committees with decision-making people, right? That is different than, like you were saying, just doing things like unpaid emotional labor. Unpaid emotional labor in the workplace is not being compensated, but you get nothing out of it, right? Sitting on committees, volunteering, getting to know people in positions of influence, that's mutually beneficial. Yep. You are putting in equity, you are investing in yourself when you do that. And I loved that you brought that up.
Absolutely. It has value.
Yes, it has value. Yes. Okay. So we are reaching an ad break. When we come back, let's continue on with the next sort of pillar, the expertise, how to sort of develop that. You are listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you are here at that time right now, you can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, several other locations at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden. Okay, Dr. Karen, we talked about building relationships while you are still a current employee and you're trying to build up that professional equity. So the next thing I'm wondering is, how do you build up the expertise? And you mentioned something really interesting about the expertise piece, which is it's not just about the expertise, it's your unique selling proposition, USP. If somebody has similar expertise, how do I build up my flavor of expertise within an organization?
Absolutely. So USP, for instance, I'll give you an example of what my USP may be for someone who appears to be similar with similar education, similar title. I literally worked my way up from the front line up to the C-suite, and I've been in the C-suite for the last 15, 16 years, but I have worked every job in between. My chosen industry is human resources. My background is operations, but human resources is my chosen industry. My specialty or my secret power is that I can create data when data does not exist, because with human resources being my industry, we were not a revenue generating department. So I needed to know how to justify my productivity and the work that my workforce did to keep my budget, to show my value at the table. So I learned how to create a formula that can be repeated over and over and over again. So now it's validated. If you can repeat it, it's validated to show how my workforce was adding value to the organization and be able to tie it to the organizational goals. So although I was not a non-revenue generating department, I was sitting there spewing out data analytics just like my peers who were in sales and marketing. And that not everybody in human resources operate like that.
Yeah.
They are in human resources for a reason. They leverage relationships. But at a certain point, you need to leverage data, irrefutable data. And I realized that once I got into leadership. And so my neck is that I can create a verifiable formula to show the work of my workforce. And this is for multi-million-dollar corporations. And so that is what makes me unique than someone else who may have worked in human resources for 28 years, have all the same degrees that I have. If they don't have the talent to be able to create data to show their work for any given task that their workforce may be responsible for, then that is what will set me apart.
Yeah. And, sometimes people don't recognize what their unique strengths are because it comes so naturally to them and they automatically gravitate to doing the thing that they don't realize, oh, this is a unique thing about me. So how did you realize either, oh, this is unique about me, or how do you help others figure that out for themselves if they think, oh, that's nothing, that's just a natural like thing I do, I just like doing that?
Well, I figured it out because I needed to. When you are a department that does not generate revenue at the table, your budget is the first to get cut, which a lot of times training is the first to get cut, and training was in my budget because prior to that, prior to me determining that this was something that I needed to put out front, prior to that, I didn't know that that was something that I needed to do. I needed to be able to justify the work of my workforce. So I did get a little help. So I'll give you the cheat sheet to that. I ended up hiring a mentor off of LinkedIn when I wanted to get into senior leadership. I didn't know anybody in senior leadership. I was an extraordinary middle manager, but I knew that management and leadership were two different things. And so I was looking for a mentor to tell me what I need to focus on to get into senior leadership. And I ended up hiring a mentor off of LinkedIn. I didn't know her. We came to an agreement. She wanted $350 an hour. Back then, I wasn't rolling like that. So I negotiated 1 hour a month, 1 hour a month for 1 year. I signed a 1 year contract. But she helped me because I love numbers. She helped me realize that not everybody can do what you can do. That's not how people lead. And when I was explaining to her how I came up, how I developed these formulas to be able to justify how I needed to hire additional staff, how I was able to tie in, she said, not everybody, particularly in HR, can do that. And so she identified and told me that what you have is unique. I didn't know it was unique. I just thought it was survival. As someone who worked in HR and didn't generate revenue, that's how I survived. But she was like, no, people don't talk analytics in HR. That is unique. And so now I share it with any indirect revenue generating departments. Now I teach them how to. So I work with marketing departments. I work with PR departments, and any department that does not directly sell, I can help them create a formula to justify the work that they're doing, to show the work that they're doing, and tie it into the organizational goals.
That's awesome. I think that there's two pieces to this that I think is really, really valuable. Number one, it sometimes takes a mentor to see things in you that you can't see in yourself. And
Absolutely.
you were sort of wise enough, thoughtful enough to say, that's what I need. I need somebody outside of me to see something I can't see within myself just yet, or to extract it out of me, right? The other is, expertise is kind of partly in the eye of the beholder. And you have to understand what your organization or your constituents value. And you were able to identify, like, my organization values revenue.
Absolutely.
And so how do I connect what I do to what they value? Now, in nonprofits, it could be something different. They value the mission. They value saving money, for example, right? Like, you have to really know what the strategic priorities are of your organization at the highest levels and what they value, and then be able to translate what does that mean for how I speak and convey the information to them, even though I might sort of speak and convey the information differently within, for example, in your HR field, we're going to talk about, how teams work and how we're hiring and selecting and, promoting and growing. But if I'm going to present something to higher level leaders, they're going to want me to translate into the language that connects to their priorities. So
Absolutely.
that's critical that you were able to sort of make those connections.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Didn't necessarily know that's what I was doing in the beginning. I was just trying to survive.
Right.
But over the years, it has served me well to lead with the numbers.
Yes. Okay, great. So now I'm a current employee. I've started doing the relationship thing through committees and volunteering and flattering people in the elevator. I've started to figure out how to prove my value connected to organizational goals. Maybe I've gotten a mentor. What's the thing I could do around my reputation? This is a tough one because you don't always have control over your reputation and how other people see you, but I bet there are ways to manage this. What would you recommend?
Yes, absolutely. So internally, you need to know what your reputation is, and your reputation is what is it that people say about you. Most times in the workforce, it's tied to the deliverables that you're responsible for, and how well you implement those deliverables, whether it's timely, because I've been in leadership for so long. All of our work is in three buckets. You either make money, save money, or achieve organizational goals. Everything we do are in those three buckets. And so people know you reputational wise by how well you do those things. Make money, save money, achieve organizational goals. And so that is what they think about you. So internally, you don't have full control, but you're only as good as your last assignment. You can outlive a bad situation. You can outlive a bad year if your department had a bad year, if you didn't make your numbers, if you lost some people, even if you were on a performance improvement plan. If you are still with the employer, you're only as good as your last goal. And so you can put some distance between that and create positive experience and positive success to band-aid your reputation until you get it to where you want it to be back in a positive light. I always recommend that people also look at your reputation outside of being connected to an employer. You do not always want to be known as Karen who works for Verizon per se. You want people in the marketplace to know what problem you solve separate from any employer. So how do you do that? You do that through speaking, sharing information, working on boards, volunteering. The same thing that you would do internally, you do externally with people other than the people that you work with. You create yourself as a subject matter expert by writing books, doing speaking engagements, volunteering, participating on boards. There are a number of different ways, but what you need to do is create that reputation where it's just tied to you and your name and the results that you create, and not tied to any particular employer. And a lot of people don't think about that until they're looking to go into business for themselves. Well, it's kind of too late then, because you want to create that reputation before you go into business for yourself. One of my coaching programs for my business is the Elevate Out coaching program that is for people who want to convert professional equity into entrepreneurship. And one of the things I ask them is, what is your reputation in the marketplace? Because you need to have that reputation before you get your LLC, before you get your business license, because you don't want to be sitting around waiting on how you're going to get clients. You want clients to already know what problem you solve and be looking for you prior to when you exit out from working on business. And so you need to think about reputation outside of an employer and within employment in terms of career elevation. That's within an employer, but externally is really what is going to save you, because people will bring external opportunities to you based on what it is that's your area of expertise and the problems that you solve and how well you do it.
That's such important advice, because that is career proofing. That right there. I can't tell you how many people I hear from that thought they were on a career path because they had a direct, immediate supervisor who had a vision for them. And then something happened. Either the supervisor left, or they had a falling out, or the supervisor got disappointed with their worker or something. And then they realized everything was in the hands of that one person, and they didn't know anybody across the organization, and they hadn't said anything up outside of the organization. And it's so devastating to see that happen to people. And so what you're saying here is like not just reputation, it's making sure more than one person knows about your worth, right?
Yes, I just you almost triggered me. So can I be transparent for 1 minute? Let me just
Yes.
be transparent for 1 minute.
Yeah.
So I have this information because I went through workplace trauma. And the situation was very similar to what you described. I was the number 2 person. I had an extraordinary record. My boss was the top boss. She had announced she was going to retire. It had been said that I was going to take her role. They'd already told me I could take her role. They started moving her tasks over to me. So I was doing my job and part of her job, getting ready for retirement. And then she got cold feet. She wasn't ready financially to retire. So what happened at that point? They were scared to tell me. So now I'm coming to work every day, and it's been over a year because she announced it a year out. So now it's been over a year, and she is not saying anything. And this was a job that I loved. I was with that organization for 14 years. And so imagine driving a 2-hour commute to a job that you love. And now this situation happens and you're at work every day and you're not happy. From that instance, I learned that you are the pilot of your career, not the co-pilot. You are the pilot. What does that mean? Do not put your career in the hands of anyone else. And so what I ended up doing, I'm a faith-based person. And so I ended up praying, and my Savior told me to show myself to the marketplace. So I got a equitable position, more money than I ever made in my life. And so I ended up leaving the company. But I went through that workplace trauma, and now I teach my coaching clients and my consulting clients, you are the pilot of your career. Never, ever do that to yourself. Once you determine you're ready for the next level, because I knew I was ready for the next level. I didn't know when it was going to happen. I really didn't have it on a timeline, but I knew I was ready. But once she announced that she was going to retire, then you automatically, now you're ready, as the kids say. Now you're ready. And so when that didn't happen, I should have asked questions. I didn't. So I take responsibility for that, me going to work every day and not asking questions. But it was also the complexity of not only was it that workplace trauma, but it was that we were friends and she was my boss because we had came up the chain together. So it was that dynamic. And so, yes, what you're saying, don't put your career elevation, your career success in the hands of anyone else. When you determine it's time for you to elevate, then you need to do it in or out, whatever that environment is that you're in at that time.
Yes. I have more thoughts, but we're reaching an ad break. So we're going to take the ad break first. And when we come back, we will take a few more questions, but then transition to like, what if I've already lost my job and I never developed that professional equity? Would I do anything different? So you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Bragu, and our guest today, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, who is talking with us about professional equity. Now, we went through the three pillars that you describe when it comes to professional equity, relationships, expertise, reputation, taking the scenario of someone who's already internal, current, and just starting to develop. And a couple of sort of thoughts I had as you started finishing up with the reputation, and thank you for sharing your own personal journey with this. It really is devastating when you don't work on this reputation piece and you rest your entire future on one person, because anything can happen, and it's not always intentional. Like in this situation, the person wasn't ready. There are people who say they're going to retire and then they get cold feet about retiring, and or they're not ready because they looked at their financial outcomes and they're realizing they're not able to retire. Whatever it is, it still affects the person who thought there was a path here. And so some of the sort of feelings I think people might be working through is, number one, guilt. Like, I feel badly if I develop a reputation outside of my direct line, because here's this supervisor who is saying they're pouring everything into me and they have a path for me and they have a vision for me. I really shouldn't be putting my eggs in multiple baskets like this. I think that's much more of a gendered thing, to feel guilty about those kinds of things. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, as well as other sort of factors around, there's so much outside of my control over how people, again, this is a gendered thing, but being seen as intimidated if I'm an ambitious woman, or being seen as emotional if I get upset in a meeting. I don't have any control over that. No, you don't. And at the same time, if you're developing your reputation in the way that Dr. Karen is describing, it probably protects you more than just assuming everything will work out. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about just the emotional aspect of building your reputation in these ways.
Yeah, I am so glad that you mentioned that. And I love how you drew attention to maybe it's more prominent in one gender than another. Even if I take myself, I was extremely loyal up to that point that work hurt happened for me, that I mentioned, that example of where I ended up not getting the position because she wasn't ready. And I didn't have I think when you are happy, you don't go looking for other opportunities when you are happy. And I think that is the issue. It's because we aren't taught to have multifaceted type lives. Maybe some of our grandparents worked for one company for 20 or 30 years, but now you'd be hard pressed to find someone who worked for a company for 10 years. And that's not because they don't want to work for 10 years. It is because there's always a lot of transition and change in business as a whole, that the company may not even exist as it is today, what it looks like 10 years from now. And so because we've kind of grew up professionally through that marketplace it's a volatile market. We don't have that loyalty gene anymore. We've seen it. We've read the newspapers, seen the news shows, seen the articles. We lived through it. And so we don't have that loyalty gene anymore that we may have had in the past. And as a result of that, now I understand the value of multiple people knowing what you have to offer. It's not being disloyal. It is making a wider influence and impact. If that's, you are, my goal is to influence and share as much knowledge as possible with people so that they can get there quicker and faster than I did. And so I can't do that just keeping all of my talents in one box. And so now we don't have to be that one lane, one way type professional. It is, you add value to your employer when you have a reputation outside of the business, because people not only associate you as a professional, but they still also associate you, if you're still working, associated with that employer, which is why a lot of entrepreneurs, which is someone who worked for someone else, are also entrepreneurs who are also working for themselves. And so their employer gets the benefit of them being an entrepreneur, and then they can, of them being an entrepreneur, and then they get the benefit being an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, now it is not frowned upon, but no one teaches us that you should kind of spread yourself a little in terms of your talents. People just don't talk about it. Usually when you hear about someone going somewhere else, it is because something has happened. Something has happened in the marketplace, something has happened with the company, the business, or in the workplace environment that causes one to change. It's not usually not voluntarily unless it's elevation.
Yeah.
Usually people move for elevation. They just don't move around internal and external just because. But now it's normalcy. It's very normal now.
That's right. So in some ways, you can think about this as you're at a distinct disadvantage to not do what Dr. Karen says.
Yeah.
So let's switch over to applying the same things: relationships, expertise, reputation. But I've never done it before. Now I've lost my job, and now what? And so we have a couple of minutes before the break, and then we'll take the break, and then we'll continue on to describe it more. But before the break, for a couple of minutes, what are some of thoughts that you have about how to start focusing when you've never done this and you just you're in the middle of a transition, you lost your job?
Well, if you've already lost your job and you're in the middle of transition, I think this is a perfect time to figure out what it is that you want to do. So based out of all of the things that you've done at this point, what path are you interested in walking down at this time? And then once you make that decision, then you would determine what is needed, like what level and what is needed to walk that path. So what I need you to do is do a little bit of homework, take out a pencil and pad, or you can say a keyboard or whatever, and write down. I need to know your successes, because you need to know your receipts in regards to where it is you want to go. I want to know the type of people you've worked with, the goals and objectives that you've worked on and accomplished, and with what level people. I want you to identify 3 companies that have that position that you want to work, that you would want to work for. And then I want you to research what the requirements are for those positions, for those 3 companies. And then I want you to take your background and what you've accomplished at that moment and shore it up against the requirements of the top 3 companies and figure out what that gap is. This is doing a gap analysis. Figure out what it is that you need to take to close that gap. Is it just, is it something that you can do on your own? Is it another degree? Is it some type of certification? Can you volunteer somewhere to get that skill set? So you want to be able to close that gap. And then you devise a plan as to when you will be ready, once you close that gap, to apply for those positions. Because what you don't want to do is to just get a job, a professional job, and I'll kind of make a difference between the two. Get a professional job that is not the job that you really want. Now that you're already unemployed, now is the time to put some thought behind it. And you can get, if it's just a matter of you having money to pay bills, because I certainly understand that, then you can just get a job that's just money to pay bills while you research and work on what is that job that I really want next, and figure out what's required of that. So now is the time for you to really devise a plan, be very strategic and intentional, You can volunteer, let everybody know you're looking for a job. And then I also tell my clients, I want you to sign up for every staffing agency within 20 miles.
Mm.
I even had a client who was almost hired in her previous position by a staffing company in another department that she left. Can you imagine walking back into your previous employer as a temporary employee? But they are there for a reason. They're there for temporary assignments, but that's an opportunity for you to try before you buy. In other words, you get to work in all of these different environments to see if this is an organization you want to work for. So yeah, that is how you do it. You this go around, now that you've been forced to pause. That's kind of what unemployment is. It kind of forces you to pause. If it's not voluntary, if it's involuntary, then let's think it through and let's be strategic and intentional on how you can leverage what it is that people know about you and how you can close that gap if needed for the ideal job that you have on deck, that you want to pursue for your next level.
These nuggets are gold, people, gold. We are reaching an ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, who's talking about professional equity. And we will be right back in just a moment.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, who talks about professional equity building. We talked about how to build this while you're still internal to an organization. And we started talking about what happens when you separated, for whether it was your choice or not, but especially when it's not your choice. And you have found that you didn't build your professional equity along the way. And I love that your advice wasn't necessarily immediately to build your professional equity. It was, come on, people, you're in survival mode. Like, there are some much more immediate things to happen first, right? And I had actually never heard of, it makes perfect sense, but this is the first time I've heard of hey, sign up for all of the staffing agencies that are out there. That makes perfect sense to do that, especially because now it's so much harder to, outside of your network building, to find positions, especially higher level positions, just trying to go on like LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever. That's very, very difficult. So as you're tapping into your network, which is the relationship building stuff, and you're doing a few other things like building your expertise, like you mentioned, around, are there gaps I need to fill? There's also more immediate things you can do, like signing up for staffing agencies, right? So in addition to that, is there any other way that people can use your three pillars of relationships, expertise, and reputation, while they're seeking their job, let's say they've gotten the staffing agency set up, they might have gotten like a survival job until they find their right job. They're starting to fill in that gap between what they want to do and where they are now. Anything else that they can do along these pillars?
Partnerships and collaborations. I don't know what the individual possibly does in terms of community, in terms of faith, but just remember that there is opportunities for you to share what it is that you are interested in and do in all of those lanes. And a lot of times we like to keep those lanes segmented. And so that goes with the whole, make sure everybody knows that you are looking for a job, because a lot of times they know of opportunities and they know you well. They actually, you don't have to go through the know, like, and trust factor because they know you. They're already in your network. And so I would say this is the time, if you aren't working a regular, consistent job, to tap into your network, even volunteering, because sometimes opportunities will present themselves now that people know that you are available.
Yes, absolutely. Nobody's going to be able to help if they don't know you're looking.
Yes.
The other thing that came to mind is when I was starting my company, and I did it very similar to how you're sort of describing, which is I was still internal, and I was trying to think about, like, what's my backup plan? Don't put all your eggs in one basket, Mira. You've got to have a backup plan here. What would that be? What would you like to do? I used some people call it ikigai, some people call it the hedgehog concept, which is kind of like a Venn diagram of 3 or 4 circles. One is writing everything that I do now in my job, everything that I'm good at, that I know I do. Out of those, pulling out in the next circle, pulling out what is it I actually enjoy out of that list? Because I don't enjoy everything I do in my job, but there are some things I do. Writing that out. In the next circle, pulling out among the things that I enjoy or I'm passionate about, what do people actually pay for? There are things I enjoy that people do not pay for.
Yes. That part.
And that alone was a good way to sit with myself and figure out what could be other ancillary connected things, complementary things that I could do that might not be exactly the same thing that I've done, but could feel like the things I really enjoy that people will also pay for.
Absolutely. And that's a great process. And a great observation as well, to know that, sometimes things that we're passionate about, there isn't a market demand for it, even though we're passionate about it. And so doing that temperature check, so that your expectations are in line with the market and payment.
Exactly. Okay. So tell us, how can people find out more about your work and what you're doing these days?
Absolutely. So my playground is LinkedIn. You can always find me on LinkedIn. And I dump a ton of free information daily on LinkedIn. So make sure you're connected to me. I also have a website that I have an upcoming conference called Sister Leaders. And so sisterleaders.com is the conference website. And the Sister Leaders community is a community of men and women who are committed to increasing the number of women in senior leadership. My vision and my mission is that I don't believe that the disparate impact of the number of men in the C-suite has to do with a lack of talent. I think it's a lack of knowledge that women do not have what is needed to make the jump from management to senior leadership. And so we come together as a conference every year. This year is October 3rd and 4th. We're also looking for speakers, but we're also going to be sharing information. These are people that are at the top of their game. They're doctors, they're high level professionals that have lanes of brilliance that they are willing and committed to sharing information and sharing knowledge, such as myself. And so we have a 2-day conference at the Rivers Casino. So when we're not conferencing, you can go to the casino, but we have a good time of sharing information and networking. So that's sisterleadersconference.com.
And if you're watching right now live, or later on the visual recording, or just going to this website, sisterleadersconference.com, you can see like they have such a lineup. You have such a lineup, Dr. Karen. This is amazing. It looks like an incredible conference for people. Folks can also find you at drkarenhillspruden.com and see all about the conference, as well as connecting and shopping and joining in lots of ways, and inviting her to speak too.
Absolutely.
All right. So, audience, what did you take away from this time with Dr. Karen? I know she shared a lot of nuggets with you. So, what did you take away? One thing that you can implement this week based on what you learned from her. Share it with us on LinkedIn. You heard she's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Catch us, share it with us, and at talkradio.nyc so we can cheer you on. The Hard Skills is also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, all over the place. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with a colleague or leave a review. And if you're looking for more personalized support and leadership or team coaching, you could also head to my website, gotowerscope.com, to schedule a consultation. Thank you to talkradio.nyc for hosting. Thank you for joining me on this journey, Dr. Karen. Really appreciate your time with us today and sharing so generously of your expertise. Together, we will navigate the complexities of leadership, emerge stronger on the other side. This is Dr. Mira Brancu signing off. Until next time, stay steady, stay present, and keep building those hard skills. Thank you, Dr. Karen.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye.